inclusive dialogue and negotiations aimed at supporting conflicting parties in finding durable solutions.
Ethiopia's Foreign Affairs Minister Gideon Timotheos says African unity remains essential for the continent's collective security, highlighting recent cooperation on UN Security Council reform, climate justice and changes to the global financial architecture. He was speaking at the opening of the 48th Ordinary Session of the African Union Executive Council at the AU headquarters in Addis Ababa. He's pointed out to Africa's common diplomatic stance, including its presence at the first G20 summit in South Africa.
As we gather here today, sitting under the umbrella of our union, which was established with the purpose of achieving political independence and economic integration, we are reminded of the importance of unity for our collective security, independence, and prosperity. This past year, we have witnessed mixed developments in our continent. It is encouraging to note that we stood together to promote a common position with regard to UN Security Council reform, climate justice, and the reform of the global financial architecture. A common position on these matters was on display, in particular in the first G20 held on African soil in South Africa.
The Job Sikhala-led National Democratic Working Group, or NDWG, says Zimbabwean President Emmerson Mnangagwa's attempt to extend his term of office, among other controversial proposals, is in breach of the African Union Constitutive Act. This as the NDWG petitioned the African Union, demanding its intervention to stop ZANU-PF from amending the constitution to extend Mnangagwa's term of office, among other controversial proposals. Sikhala says they have asked the AU to invoke its own protocols, which ZANU-PF is in violation of.
The fifth point, which we are relying upon, is the manipulation of the constitutional processes in a member state for them to prolong the leader of the term of office of the incumbent. This provision of the prolongation or extension of the terms of office of the incumbent was put in place after Africa has faced several challenges by many regimes and many governments that have been trying to extend their terms of office after their two terms have come to an end.
At least 21 people have died after a passenger boat sank in a River Nile state in northern Sudan. The Sudan Doctors Network says the boat was traveling between the villages of Taiba, Al-Kawad and Daim Al-Kari, carrying nearly 30 passengers, including women, elderly people and children. Rescue teams are continuing with their search operations. Sudan often sees accidents involving traditional boats, which are commonly used to cross the Nile because bridges are scarce, particularly in rural areas. And finally, polls have closed in Bangladesh in the first election since the uprising that ousted the authoritarian Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina 18 months ago. Her Awami League party was banned from fielding candidates, with the election pitting a coalition headed by the Jamaat-e-Islami party against the centre-right Bangladesh Nationalist Party. These people in the capital Dhaka described how they felt as they came to vote.
We want the country to be run better after this election. We are poor people. My husband has died and I have no children. We want help from the government.
It's been so long since we've had the chance to vote. It feels festive and I'm very happy to be part of it.
Since early morning, I've never seen an election this clean. I've voted many times in my life. There used to be a lot of nuisances during elections, but this time it's very peaceful.
Recapping the top story this hour, South Africa's International Relations and Cooperation Minister Ronald Lamola says the country's election to the AU Peace and Security Council reaffirms its commitment to play a critical role to a safe continent. South Africa was elected alongside Lesotho to represent the southern region in the council. For any news stories you would like to share with us, please do send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa News, I'm Cholani Tulo Mwepe.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
In our sports headline, Mo Salah in talks with Saudi Arabia club over lucrative deal. And Stephen Mukoka says it's not a good idea to stage national champs with other races. I'll be back with these and other stories at the bottom of the hour.
Connecting Africa to the world. Africa in Business with Tami Ngubeni brings you the latest insights on Africa's economy.
It is exactly 7 minutes after 4 p.m. Central African time. Coming up this afternoon, the State of the Nation address being delivered tonight by President Cyril Ramaphosa. We'll be focusing on that, as well as Kenya's aviation sector. They're now bracing themselves for possible disruption next week as the Kenyan Aviation Workers Union serves the Civil Aviation Authority with a 7-day strike notice.
African enterprise meets global opportunity. Africa in Business on Channel Africa.
We start off today with a focus on mining, and the Africa's continent mining future could be set for a technological shift. The Council for Geoscience and global mining giant BHP have signed a new partnership aimed at strengthening mineral exploration through advanced geoscience research, digital data systems and cutting-edge computing. The collaboration is expected to support more sustainable mining, reduce exploration risks and potentially open the sector to new and emerging players, while aligning with the country's critical minerals and just energy transition goals. Our economics reporter, Innocent Simosa, has more from the Africa Mining Indaba.
Senior Specialist Scientist for Exploration at the Council for Science, Dr. Sinaj Bobodze, says the partnership with BHP has the potential to reshape Africa's mining and exploration landscape, particularly at a time when investor confidence in the sector remains fragile.
Yes, we signed a memorandum of understanding with BHP Explore, which is, as you said, it's a big mining company. So from that memorandum, what we are planning to work on is to use their expertise, our data and their data to understand some of the mineralization systems that we have in the Northern Cape. So it is more of a collaborative approach so that they can bring their innovative ideas, we bring our innovative ideas, and we have a much more better understanding and see if we can discover some of the tier 1 deposits in the country.
But how does this MOU support South Africa's just energy transition and critical minerals agenda while ensuring that mineral development remains critically responsible and socially inclusive?
No, thanks. I mean, it's very important that as much as we are looking for these critical minerals, we do it in a responsible manner. So we need to still take into consideration the environment. The demand for these critical minerals is definitely very high, so which then puts the miners at risk in terms of trying to meet the demands and kind of jeopardize the environment, because now you are under pressure to produce what is the needed by the world. But at the same time, as the Council for Geoscience, we do this in a way, we do our exploration in a way that remains sustainable. So we are making sure that we can find as many valuable deposits that then can be exploited and exploited in a sustainable manner, not just in a way that damages the environment.
He says improving literacy and meaningfully engaging with communities is key to building trust and ensuring sustainable mining development.
Yes, that's actually our very first step before we proceed with any exploration project. We take the time to go and engage the community, explain to the community what we are going to be doing, how we are going to be doing it, and what the results might mean in terms of the overall development, not just for the local community, but for the country as a whole.
As the curtain falls on this year's Mining Indaba, partnerships such as this signal a renewed push to rebuild confidence, unlock Africa's mineral potential, and place science and sustainability at the center of the continent's mining future. Whether this collaboration delivers on its promise will be closely watched by investors, communities, and policymakers alike. For Channel Africa News, I'm Innocent Simosa in Cape Town, South Africa.
It is 11 minutes after 4 p.m. Central African time as we turn our focus now to the water crisis in South Africa. The country's water challenges are no longer seen as mere scarcity, but as a pressing future risk. With demand in Gauteng, the country's economic hub, at a record level and aging infrastructure under strain, water has become a critical constraint on business continuity, on supply chains and long-term competitiveness. At an Investec Properco Industry Dialogue, Dr. Sean Phillips, who's Director General of the Department of Water and Sanitation, warned that addressing the country's water infrastructure backlog would require around $24.5 billion. The Department of Water and Sanitation's Director General, Dr. Sean Phillips, with us now on the line. A very good afternoon to you, DG. Thank you for your time this afternoon.
Good afternoon, Tommy, and good afternoon to your listeners.
So, DG, you've highlighted a $24.5 billion price tag, and that's around 400 billion rand, and that is the infrastructure backlog on its own. How immediate is the risk of service failures if this funding isn't secured soon?
Tommy, that's not quite accurate. The 400 billion rand backlog I talked about is just the backlog of infrastructure in the 105 worst performing municipalities in terms of our blue and green drop reports that we did in 2023. That excludes the major metropolitan municipalities, which weren't amongst the worst performing municipalities. So actually the backlog is a lot more. If you include all the municipalities, including the metropolitan municipalities, the total backlog would be a lot more than 400 billion.
And if I had to ask you to estimate what that number is, where would you land?
I don't know. We haven't done that calculation, but just as a very rough estimate, it will probably be at least double that.
Right, because
that includes both water and sanitation. You have to look at water and sanitation together because they go hand in hand. If you, for example, look at the problems with water supply in Hammanskraal, which has been very much in the news, Hammanskraal just outside Pretoria. The reason why there's no clean water coming from the taps in Hammanskraal is because there's a wastewater treatment plant on the Arpies River, which is owned by the city of Tshwane, which became dysfunctional due to a lack of maintenance and is completely overloaded with sewage compared to the volume that it was designed to take. And it was pouring basically untreated sewage into the Arpies River. And downstream in the same river is the city of Tshwane Tembe Water Treatment Works, which draws water from that river to treat it and give it to Hammanskraal. And that water was so badly polluted with sewage pollution that the Tembe Water Treatment Works could no longer work, and that's why Hammanskraal has no water. And that's why you have to look at water and sanitation together. And that 400 billion is the backlog of both water and sanitation infrastructure in the worst performing municipalities.
And as you say, if you've got to be realistic, you've got to almost double that in order to be able to cater for all of the other areas which you haven't looked at. So what strategy do you have as government in order to raise or allocate this amount? And is that what you're looking for? Are you actually looking for the bare minimum, or is there going to be an attempt to raise even more to deal with the problem because it is widespread?
Tommy, in South Africa, as in almost every country in the world, the water sector is supposed to be financially self-sustaining. It's like the electricity sector. I'm not aware of any countries in the world where everybody gets as much water and electricity as they want for free. Water and electricity are trading services. So there's a whole value chain for water where people purchase water, consumers, households and businesses and industries and farmers, they all purchase water. And that revenue from the sale of water is supposed to be used to develop the infrastructure which is required and to maintain and operate it. If we were to move away and say, no, water is not going to be financially self-sustaining and it's going to be funded for by general government revenues, that would require a huge increase in tax, in VAT or income tax or companies tax. And we've seen what happened in Parliament recently when the government tried to raise tax. It was voted down. Or it would require a huge cut in other departments' budgets, which is also not feasible. The education and health departments' budgets, for example, are already cut so that they are struggling to provide the services. So we have to make it work in South Africa of the water and sanitation sector being financially self-sustaining. And the underlying problem that we have is that our no-drop report in 2023 found that the average level of non-revenue water in municipalities in South Africa was almost 50%. In other words, the municipalities having to pay to produce water, because it costs money to produce water. You have to treat it, you have to store it, you have to distribute it. All of that costs money. They're paying to do that, or they're buying treated water from the water boards, and the water boards are completely financially self-sustaining and have to get revenue to fund their operations as well. But if they're having to pay that and pay to buy water from the water boards, and then they're only getting revenue on 50% of what they're having to pay for, then it's clear that the system as it is now of it being financially self-sustaining is not working, because you can't be sustainable on a financially self-sustaining basis if you're only getting revenue on 50%.
And DG, this is not a scenario that is likely to change anytime soon, especially considering our over 42% unemployment rate in the country. So what are the solutions that government has in place? We've highlighted a number of places where cuts can happen, but they cannot happen there. So where to from here?
I'm not sure that there's strong evidence that the reason why municipalities have such high non-revenue water is because people are too poor to pay for water. In fact, if you go to rural areas where there's been a failure of water supply, or people yet haven't been supplied with water, and if you ask people there where they get their water from, since it's not being provided by their municipalities, they'll tell you that they either go and collect it from rivers, which is dangerous, or they buy it from water vendors at a much higher price than it would be supplied by the municipality. The evidence that I've seen shows that the main reasons why municipalities have high non-revenue water is because their billing and revenue collection systems are weak, and because they haven't been maintaining their water distribution systems properly. So there are a high level of leaks in the distribution systems. The average level of leaks across the country is about 32%, but in many municipalities it's much worse than that. So I don't think it's correct to say that the high level of non-revenue water is because people can't afford to pay. There isn't evidence of that. The evidence is that it's actually a problem of billing and revenue collection by municipalities, and municipalities not prioritizing budgeting for maintenance of their infrastructure.
So you are citing inefficient systems as really being the backbone around this. What we've seen as well, DG, are the impacts that these water shortages are having on business. How does the department view the threat to business continuity, especially in a province like Gauteng, if this water crisis continues to worsen?
As you say, it's obviously extremely concerning, and it's a risk to economic growth that we all want for the country.
And what is it that citizens and communities can do to help mitigate the water crisis while the infrastructure backlog is being addressed?
There's a lot that citizens and businesses can do. And I'd like to talk a little bit about what happened in the city of Cape Town when they were approaching day zero a few years ago. Do you remember there was a very severe drought in Cape Town, which meant that the dams which Cape Town draws its water from became almost empty. And that's when they coined the term day zero, because the day zero was the day when the dams would become completely dry and they wouldn't be able to provide any water distribution network anymore. So they needed to draw out that time as long as possible before the dams ran dry, to draw out that time by reducing the demand, by getting people to use water sparingly. And they did that very successfully through a range of measures. They put in place very strong water use restrictions, and they enforced them strongly. They had a very strong media campaign to the public and awareness campaign, and they tried to get civil society leaders and business leaders to be involved in this campaign, and they named and shamed people who were using water excessively and using water wastefully. And as a result of all of those measures, they successfully reduced demand for water in Cape Town by 40% from before the day zero drought happened to after the day zero drought happened. And they've managed to sustain that low level of consumption in Cape Town. Now, if we could have the same situation here in Gauteng, if we could very quickly reduce our consumption, not even by 40%, just by, say, 15 or 20%, there wouldn't be the kind of water supply disruptions that we're having now, because the fundamental underlying reason why we're having these water supply disruptions is because the demand for water in Gauteng is exceeding the available supply.
All right, we'll leave it at that for this afternoon. Director General, thank you so much for your time today and the insight. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's the Director General at the South Africa's Department of Water and Sanitation, Dr. Sean Phillips, highlighting all the things that are wrong with systems, specifically in municipalities, inefficient billing and collection systems, and a lack of maintenance of that infrastructure, that having led to where we are. It's 22 minutes after 4.
From local studios to cross-border conversations, from traditional broadcasting to artificial intelligence, radio has always connected people. This Radio Day on Channel Africa. Join us for a special collaboration when On the Move crosses to Ikwekwezi FM from 9 till 12, and The Upside connects with Kulumani FM from Zimbabwe from 1 till 4 p.m. Central African Time as they talk about the evolution of radio. This World Radio Day, it's radio and AI, honoring where we come from and embracing where we are going. Channel Africa, the African perspective. Stay ahead with Africa in Business, where Tami Ngubeni unpacks your go-to source for Africa's economic trends and development.
It is exactly 23 minutes after 4 p.m. Central African Time. Kenya's aviation sector is bracing itself for possible disruption next week. This after the Kenya Aviation Workers Union, KAWU, issued a 7-day strike notice to the Kenya Civil Aviation Authority. The union says the industrial action stems from the authority's alleged failure to finalize a long outstanding collective bargaining agreement, as well as concerns over workers being kept on temporary contracts in positions the union maintains are permanent. For more on this, we joined on the line by the Secretary General of the Kenya Aviation Workers Union, KAWU, Mos Ndiema. A very good afternoon to you. Welcome to Africa in Business.
Good afternoon to you.
So what are the specific issues that remain unresolved in the collective bargaining agreement negotiations? If you could just take us through those, please.
As you correctly put it in your initial remarks, one of them happens to be an outstanding collective bargaining agreement that dates back to 2015. So that for more than a decade, Kenya Civil Aviation Authority has not been able to engage us fruitfully and to negotiate a collective bargaining agreement for the unionizable staff in that organization. And up to now, they're still, playing games, throwing technicalities on the way of negotiating a CBA. That becomes one of our key demands and the reason why we have resolved to call for a strike action. Another issue is that around the discrimination at the workplace, and that is where the issue of contract employment comes in, where you have a group, or rather a big constituency of employees employed on contract or temporary terms. Their terms are inferior compared to their colleagues who are on permanent and pensionable terms. Even the medical cover extended to them does not cover the family. It covers a particular individual employee only. So that forms another basis for us to call for a strike, because management is adamant. One other reason why we have resorted to calling a strike is that KCA management is blocking a section of employees from exercising their constitutional right, that of joining and participating in the activities of a trade union. And they are purportedly arguing that these employees belong to the management cadre, something that we dispute and we do not buy it. Our constitution does not discriminate in availing the right of association. It says every employee has a right. That means everybody in that organization, including the CEO, if he chooses to belong to a union, he does not commit any wrongdoing. He cannot be a subject of any disciplinary action for that matter. So we have a host of other demands. For example, one of our members was terminated from employment. And on her own motion, she moved to court and successfully made a petition for her reinstatement. The court actually entered judgment against KCA management and directed that KCA reinstates that employee and with full terms. That was last year, September, when that judgment was delivered. To date, KCAA is yet to obey that court order. And we are shocked because we thought as a legal entity, as a corporate entity, they know best that we are all subject to the law. We cannot operate outside the law.
So, Mr. Ndiema, Mr. Ndiema, I mean, you've highlighted a lot of the challenges that you are facing internally as workers in the aviation sector, including this particular case that you've highlighted now. How are those factors, as well as the looming strike, how has this affected the workers' job security?
I lost you. Can you come again?
Yes. Do you hear me now?
Yeah, I'm getting you now.
Lovely, thank you. You've highlighted a lot of the challenges that you've been experiencing as workers within the aviation sector, and as well as the looming strike. How has all of this affected the workers' job security, their benefits, as well as their morale?
At KCA today, I would say productivity is so low. You come across a workforce that is not motivated. You come across a workforce that is disillusioned. You have across a workforce that is desperate. They are thinking of what else can we do to make ends meet. And you can tell it. They're struggling in life. They're struggling to meet school fees obligations, for housing. Some have to, fall back on their families to supplement medical cover and that kind of a thing. And we thought that is very embarrassing because KCA is one of the most treasured and respected organization in Kenya today. So it has a huge impact. And we also know that the strike action, if it will take place, will equally have a huge impact, not just in Kenya, but internationally.
What would it take, Mr. Ndiema, for the strike action to be called off? What are the conditions that would need to be met, at least the minimum conditions, because there's a lot that seems to need addressing?
The very minimum conditions, very minimum conditions, of course, for a collective bargaining agreement, it takes the process of negotiation. So we are not demanding that KCA wakes up tomorrow morning and they present us with a concluded CBA. No, that will take a bit of time, and we are willing and as long as the negotiations are productive. But what must be done immediately is one, that all employees in KCA grade 4 and 5 those who haven't expressed interest to join the union, that right, that choice must be immediately acknowledged by KCAA and allow them to enjoy the benefits of being represented by union. Number two, we had not mentioned about human resource instruments that KCAA did without the involvement of the union. We have demanded that KCAA immediately drops the new human resource instruments, career progression, and the new organizational structure to pave way for engagements with us on how to come up with a new set of the instruments.
We'll
now,
have to leave it at that,
if they
unfortunately.
can meet,
Mr. Ndiema, unfortunately, time is not on our side this afternoon, but we thank you very much just for highlighting some of those really key issues. Thank you, sir. That's Mr. Moss Ndiema. He is the Secretary General at Kenya Aviation Workers Union. He takes us to 4:32 as we head over now to the markets desk, where Thabiso Lehoko is standing by for your latest indicators.
Business News on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Thanks, Tammy. In South Africa, the dollar will cost you 15 Rand 84. In Botswana, 12 Pula 97. Namibia, 15 Namibian dollars 84. And in Zambia, it's at 18 Kwacha 98. In Kenya, the dollar will cost you 127 shilling, 176. Ethiopia, 155 birr 6. Uganda, 3,000 shilling, 525. And in Tanzania, 2,000 shilling, 587. In Nigeria, it's at 1,352 naira. In Egypt, the dollar will cost you 46 Egyptian pound, 784. Tunisia, 2 dinar, 283. Algeria, 128 dinar, 561. The Moroccan dirham is at 940 to the dollar. In Angola, the dollar, 912 kwanza, 185. The Congolese franc, 2,190 to the dollar. Commodities markets: gold $5,072, platinum $2,113 per ounce, Brent crude oil $69.14 a barrel. For any business stories you would like to share with us, please send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa Business in Johannesburg, I'm Thabiso Lehoko.
Business News on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
And from the latest from the business of sport, a very good Thursday afternoon to you, Figile Lingwati.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Good afternoon, Tammy. We kick off with football news. Liverpool forward Mohamed Salah has opened discussions to join his Saudi Pro League club Al Ittihad in the summer. After the Reds' 3-3 draw against Leeds United in December, Salah hit out at the Liverpool for being made a scapegoat for their poor performances and claimed he no longer had a relationship with Arne Slot. Reports in the aftermath of the situation claim that Salah and Slot have agreed to put their differences aside until the season's end, with the 33-year-old now expected to stay until the end of the season, when he's expected to move to Saudi Arabia. It is reported that Salah could treble his wages if he moves to Saudi Arabia in the summer, from around $540,000 a week to $1.6 million a week, which would total $82 million. Former Liverpool winger Jermaine Pennant thinks Bayern Munich winger Michael Olise would be a good option to replace Salah if the Egyptian leaves Anfield in the summer transfer window. Mozambique have opened up negotiations with former coach Chiquinho Conde over a new contract, just days after highlighting that his term with national team had come to an end. The Mozambican Football Federation, FMF, have informed its governing bodies, the media and the general public that it has initiated the formal negotiation process with Francisco Querel Conde Jr. regarding his continued tenure as national team coach. Former international striker Conde, who played for Mozambique at 2 Cup of Nations and coached them at the last 2, was not offered a contract renewal at the end of January when his deal expired, despite taking the Mambas to the knockout stage of the Cup of Nations for the first time in Morocco. After sealing an improved sponsorship package, Kenyan Premier League club Kakamega Homeboys owner Cleopas Shimanyula has vowed to deliver domestic double this campaign. The Kakamega-based club smiled all the way to the bank after the title sponsors Mozartbet increased their financial support. The betting firm renewed partnership with the club for another year, extending a relationship that continues to play a key role in its ambitions. Under the renewed deal, as seen by Fleshco, Homeboys will receive an additional $38,000, raising the total sponsorship package to $192,000 for a year. Apart from the increment, Homeboys will stand to earn additional millions in incentives from the firm if they clinch the Premier League title or reclaim the Mozartbet FKF Cup, which they last won in 2023. Homeboys are currently sitting 6th on the 18th team league table with 28 points, 12 fewer than leaders Gor Mahia. Homeboys have won 7 matches, drawn 7 and lost 4. Now into athletics. South Africa's most decorated long-time distance runner Stephen Mukoka says incorporating Athletics South Africa's national championship events into existing commercial races takes away the prestige of being crowned a national champion.
But in terms of marathon, I wish we can have our purely national championships, not incorporated with races, so that when you finish, you can feel that you have won the nationals. It doesn't work that you're going to win the nationals, but you finish third, but you're going to be called a national champion.
One of the reasons ASA, that's Athletics South Africa, may have opted to incorporate the championship into existing races is to boost competition and attract better prize money, giving athletes an opportunity to run faster times. However, Mukoka insists that the National Marathon Championship should not be about financial incentives, but about pride and honor.
National championship is just basically like you need to be crowned a champion. People who do it for money, they've got their own reasons. For me, being a champion doesn't matter what is going to be recognized. You go through the history book. So my wish is to see national be like nationals, like the cross countries, like the track and field. So for me, whoever athlete chooses to go and run national because there's no money, it's their choice.
For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, please send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +2711 714 4459. This is Channel Africa Sport with me, Figile Lungwati.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African perspective. African enterprise meets global opportunity. Africa in business on Channel Africa.
It is exactly 4:39 Central African Time. We turn our focus now to the South African President Cyril Ramaphosa. He is set to deliver the State of the Nation address this evening. The Congress of South African Trade Unions, COSATU, has emphasized that the address must outline clear strategies to tackle the country's pressing challenges, including a dangerously high unemployment rate of 42.4%. Sluggish economic growth of just 1%, persistent poverty and inequality, as well as widespread crime and corruption. For more on this, we're joined on the line by the spokesperson of COSATU, Zanele Sabela. A very good afternoon to you. Welcome to Africa in Business.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much for having us.
So what are the key economic reforms that COSATU is hoping that the President will announce in this year's SONA, especially when it comes to jobs?
So looking at jobs, we are looking at the fact that, we have to commend government for the successes that we can see. And Eskom has been that good story in the last few years, in that, we have seen the back of load shedding. But it still needs support. And because when it's working effectively, then, it helps the economy grow. We know that big businesses have complained about the very high energy costs. And early this week, we had NESA saying that, it's authorized Eskom to have a much higher increase than we had anticipated. Now we're talking 8% as opposed to the 5.3% we were anticipating. And so that's one thing that we need to be looking at. And we also think that private users should all go to be prepaid. And when it's prepaid, then it's a lot better because we know that municipalities owe Eskom about 100 billion, which doesn't help at all. And we're also looking at Transnet and the reforms that are busy happening there. We welcome them, but then obviously Transnet still needs support because, when it works effectively, it supports jobs in manufacturing, agriculture, and mining. Also, Metro Rail is really important because it transports workers to their workplaces at a very cheap rate because it's so heavily subsidized. But then we're also looking at the fact that, government has always is held on to these austerity measures. It's frozen post and if it's not hiring where service delivery is supposed to be, then we see what we're seeing right now in that things are not moving. Municipalities are virtually collapsing, and there is talk of a new funding model for municipalities. We'd like to see that come in. Also, crime and corruption is a thing that, we're now very concerned about. We know that we've heard about illicit cigarettes and how that has affected British American Tobacco. 1,500 jobs gone, and that is something that we do not want to see. And it's really worrying that BAT said now the illicit cigarettes have 75% of the market. So crime is a problem. It's becoming more of a problem. Corruption, we all know that takes away the money that's supposed to deliver the services that we need. And so we need government to look at that seriously and make sure that all hands on deck. The way we approached COVID, we should be approaching this, horrendous scourge of crime that we are dealing with in this country.
Zanele, I'd like to just extend the area that we spoke about earlier on around jobs. In 2025, we saw a plethora of jobs being lost, specifically in the automotive sector. What are your expectations regarding industrial policy as well as support for local automotive and manufacturing, specifically considering the China-Africa trade agreement that has just been signed now, the non-tariff treaty between the two countries?
So that is a serious concern because we are thinking that, like I said, all hands on deck. So we're looking at the fiscus, we're looking at the funding organizations to come through and put a stimulus package on the table to make sure that those businesses, industrialization is actually supported. I mean, we've heard that ArcelorMittal last year was closing in Newcastle, another 3,500 jobs. The smelters are complaining about the very high cost of electricity. And so there has been a deal there to say, let's help the ferrochrome smelters in terms of electricity for the next 12 months. But then in terms of those, the motor industry itself has complained when there's been this suggestion that, you need to put 50% tariffs on the cars that are coming in fully built. But we need to go further than that because we had auto manufacturers in this country, in the Eastern Cape. It was, it was a solid environment where we knew this is what's happening in the sector. And so it is worrying that we have that problem there. But then government needs to be speaking to the Chinese to make sure that, the cars don't necessarily come in here fully built. Let's see what we can do. The same things that we have seen with Ford, with BMW, with Toyota. These are the deals that we should be talking about.
Zanele Sabela, we thank you so much for highlighting what is top of mind and priority for COSATU ahead of tonight's State of the Nation address by President Cyril Ramaphosa. We thank you for your time, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you. She's the spokesperson for the Congress of South African Trade Unions, COSATU.
African enterprise meets global opportunity. Africa in business on Channel Africa.
We continue our focus on South Africa and its economy with the International Monetary Fund. They expect South Africa's economy to grow by 1.3% in 2025 and 1.4% in 2026, supported by household spending and greater investments driven by structural reforms. The IMF commends the South African government for maintaining macroeconomic stability and resilience amid global uncertainty. In its latest Article 4 report, the IMF Board of Directors further praised South African authorities for lowering the inflation target to 3%. However, it emphasized that trade and global policy uncertainty remain a risk. SABC's economics reporter Naledi Ngobo filed this report.
The IMF expects South Africa's economic growth to reach 1.8% in the next 3 years and projects that inflation will converge to the new 3% target by the end of 2027. The International Financial Institution acknowledged the reduction of the country's fiscal deficit. However, it points out that the budget deficit remains elevated, resulting in stubbornly high debt levels. Division Chief at the IMF, Delia Velkulescu, had this to say.
The South African Reserve Bank new 3% inflation target is an important policy achievement. The exit from the FATF grey list and continued progress of structural reforms under Operation Vulindlela have supported confidence in the South African economy and have led to a first credit rating upgrade in many years. In this context, we have revised up our growth projections in the near term and expect growth to reach around 1.3% in 2025 and 1.4% this year, and to gradually rise to around 1.8% over the medium run.
Velkulescu points out that the implementation of structural reforms that allowed for private participation in the logistics and electricity sector have been effective in turning around South Africa's economic picture. She says other areas of reform could potentially unlock greater economic growth.
We recommend an ambitious package of reforms tackling regulatory barriers to the business environment, weaknesses in governance, and supported by labor market reforms that can help unlock jobs and growth. In sum, resilience so far, but need to pursue that resilience through prudent macroeconomic policies.
Velkulescu emphasized that as the finance minister prepares to table the budget later this month, government should aim to deliver and maintain a primary budget surplus in line with its own projections.
We do look forward to the 2026 budget itself, and what we would hope and expect from it is, number one, to see adherence to the primary surplus target that was announced in the medium-term budget statement, so the 1.5% of GDP primary surplus. We hope that will be maintained. And importantly, we hope that the budget will specify the reforms needed to get there. What kind of reforms those might be? First, controlling the public sector wage bill would be something that would be looking at, and we know that the government has plans to address some of the inefficiencies there, to incentivize early retirement. We're also looking at reforms of procurement and improving its efficiency and transparency.
The IMF says fiscal consolidation efforts should focus on improving the efficiency and equity of public spending while protecting vulnerable groups and mobilize domestic revenues. I'm Naledi Ngobo in Johannesburg.
Africa in Business on Channel Africa. Conversations are happening, and Channel Africa is at the heart of them. We tell the African story with clarity, pride, and purpose, reaching audiences that matter to your brand. Partner with us and connect your business with listeners across borders in multiple languages and markets. For partnership opportunities, sponsorship, or sales, email us at partnership@channelafrica.co.za. Channel Africa, the African perspective. African enterprise meets global opportunity. Africa in Business on Channel Africa.
It certainly is the African perspective. Coming up at the top of the hour, we switch languages. We also switch shows from English to French, from Africa in Business to Vue d'Afrique. Standing by is Joël giving us an update of what they've got in store for us in the next 10 minutes. Bonjour, madame.
Bonjour, Tammy. Bonjour à tous les auditeurs de Channel Africa sur Vue d'Afrique. On parlera de Madagascar où l'heure est au bilan après le passage du cyclone Gézani qui a détruit à 75% la ville de Tamatave. Et nous parlerons également du Sénégal. Plusieurs responsables placés en garde à vue dans le cadre des investigations suite à la mort d'un étudiant, mais aussi du Nigeria qui s'apprête à accueillir 200 instructeurs militaires américains. Et évidemment, en deuxième partie avec Jolino Sungu, en sport, il sera question notamment des visites d'inspection de la CAF au Kenya, en Tanzanie et en Ouganda. C'est tout à l'heure sur Vue d'Afrique. Merci, Tammy.
Merci beaucoup. That's Joel coming up at the top of the hour.
African enterprise meets global opportunity. Africa in business on Channel Africa.
So across the African continent, businesses are navigating an operating environment that's increasingly shaped by global market volatility, currency fluctuations, interest rate cycles, and geopolitical shifts. All of these are having a growing impact on financial performance, especially for firms with cross-border exposure. In South Africa, this context aligns with the State of the Nation address. It is the SONA. We've been speaking about it throughout the course of this afternoon. What this SONA does is it outlines government policy, economic interventions, as well as the government's reform priorities. For more on this, we joined on the line by Trisha Swinarai. And Trisha Swinarai is head of institutional forex and money market at Nedbank Corporate and Investment Banking. A very good afternoon to you. Welcome to Africa in Business.
Thanks, Tommy. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate the time with you guys.
Great to have you with us. Now, when we look at many African businesses, they are operating in really uncertain global conditions. But I'm sure this is the same for businesses around the globe. But our focus now is on the continent. What is changing in how our leaders need to think about financial risk in today's climate?
Sure. So business leaders are moving from reactive financial management to forward planning. The operating environment is shaped by multiple moving parts at the same time. So things like currency shifts, interest rate cycles, supply chain pressures, and geopolitical tensions are all influencing business performances. The biggest shift for us is mindset. Financial risk is no longer something managed only in treasury. It is now a core leadership and strategic conversation.
So when we talk about a mature approach to foreign exchange, in practical terms, what does that look like? What does a more disciplined or mature approach to Forex look like in today's world?
Sure. So I guess it starts with linking foreign exchange decisions directly to real business activity. Whether you're an individual planning for a holiday, whether you're a corporate client trying to understand the exposure to supplier payments, expansion plans, offshore procurement, and capital investment cycles, it all means that planning currency needs early in the business cycle is very important, and also making these decisions closer to payment deadlines is essential.
Let's focus on what's really topical right now. Everybody's talking and anticipating the State of the Nation address tonight with the president. How does this connect to how businesses need to manage financial risk? Also, throughout today, we've been talking about the various economic challenges in different sectors that pose increased risk for businesses to function. And within that matrix, where do you as Nedbank fit in? How do you support your clients in these very murky waters?
Sure. As you mentioned, Tommy, in your introduction to this particular session, moments like the State of Nation address are important because they signal economic priorities, reform direction, and the areas of focus for the year ahead. So in periods like this, businesses tend to focus mostly on resilience, cost control, and their long-term planning. And that is where foreign exchange becomes very practical. So from a Nedbank perspective, the focus is on helping clients move from reactive FX decision-making to structured, forward-looking planning. So this combines, it includes combining real-time market access, digital execution, and advisory support to help our businesses align FX decisions to real economic activity. The idea or the goal is to help our clients operate with confidence in uncertain conditions and turn the volatility or bring all these variables together into an informed action.
So we've spoken about the risks. What about the opportunities? What are the opportunities in the current currency environment?
Sure. So I guess businesses use foreign exchange to lock in costs. They use it to protect margins, to stabilize cash flows, and reduce uncertainty and future obligations. The objective is not to outperform the market, but rather to remove currency volatility as a source of the business risk. So when FX is aligned to real economic activity, i.e. trade flows, balance sheet exposure, funding needs, it becomes a vital planning instrument and not a trading one.
All right.
Yeah.
All right, we'll leave it at that for this afternoon, Tricia. What do you hope the government will be focusing on, at least the president will be focusing on in the State of the Nation address, something that you believe will actually bring relief to the businesses that you serve?
I think in top of mind for me is all the structural reform. It's talking to infrastructure problems, talking about infrastructure spending that will then facilitate growth in the economy, which then puts businesses in a much more favorable position to actually be revenue generative, to see the opportunities in each of those sectors and find a pivotal part to play in building our society.
Tricia, thank you very much for that update. And we certainly hope that there will be a whole lot of that coming out of the State of the Nation address tonight. You have yourself a splendid evening further.
Thanks, Tommy. Thank you for your time.
It's been great. That was Tricia Sounaré. She's the head of institutional FX and money market at Nedbank Corporate and Investment Banking. That's Nedbank CIB. That's how we come to the end of this Thursday edition of Africa in Business. Without a doubt, I'm sure tomorrow we'll be looking back at tonight and some of the key outcomes of the State of the Nation address. Infrastructure challenges, that's been key. The automotive industry, the steel industry, Eskom, Transnet, all of those various sectors that were highlighted throughout the course of our conversations today. We'll see what the president has to say about that and give you a report back as well as an analysis come tomorrow's edition of Africa in Business. From myself, Tami Ngubeni, and the entire team, you have yourself a splendid evening further. We hand you over now to Vue d'Afrique on the French desk. Restez connectés.
Africa in Business. Africa in Business delivers key insights and real-time updates on
mission in the Democratic Republic of Congo after nearly 27 years of involvement. Defense expert Dean Wingren, what are the main security implications of South Africa withdrawing troops from MONUSCO, and why now?
South Africa has been part of the MONUSCO mission since it was established in 1999 and is South Africa's longest running peacekeeping and peace enforcement mission. So it's not something to be taken lightly when the president says that he's unilaterally withdrawing from the mission. Why now is the question. Well, the MONUSCO mission has always been intended to be terminated initially at the end of 2025, and then it was extended to the end of this year. So with the funding crisis within the UN generally, there's less funds for these peacekeeping missions, and hence the UN has had to cut back on the various contributing countries and equipment.
Africa Update with Lulu Kabu, 12 to 1 p.m. Central African Time.
Vue d'Afrique, un magazine des actualités en français sur Channel Africa. Rendez-vous du lundi au vendredi avec Joël Mouteba sur Channel Africa de 15h à 16h, temps universel. Channel Africa, la perspective africaine.
L'heure est au bilan à